Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Steve Rothstein, who has not had a day off since he took over the leadership of the JFK Library Foundation. As a family, we were thrilled when he accepted this charge. We didn't quite tell him that he never actually got to have a weekend, and that he was assuming the role and responsibilities in the centennial year of President Kennedy's birth. I have spent an awful lot of time with him over the course of the last couple of months. My schedule, as you can imagine, is pretty booked, so I can't make every event, although Steve does, and how he possibly, it probably sounds very much like that in the back, how he possibly is able to do it, Steve, I have no idea, but deeply grateful. Thank you for all that you've done and to make this weekend such a success. To the panelists that are here, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your stories. Congressman Shays, I believe I saw over in the corner. Congressman, thank you so much for being here and your continued dedication, sitting right next to a dear friend and tireless Peace Corps advocate, Maureen Orth. Thank you very much for being here as well. And to the incomparable Senator Wofford, thank you for the shout out for gingers everywhere. Somebody else in the crowd too, apparently. And to all of you, I have to say it was with a huge smile on my face that I saw how many hands went up when Steve asked how many were returned Peace Corps volunteers. I cannot tell you how honored I am to join you today, not only as a congressman from Massachusetts, as a representative from my family, but as one of those alumni as well, of the 225,000 returned Peace Corps volunteers who have served in over 141 countries over the globe over the course of the last 5 decades. It is and will be the proudest line on my resume. But as I'm sure many of you in this room can attest to, trying to find the words to sum up what that experience is like has never been easy, although you get the question all the time. It's an odd one because if you flip it around, you tell somebody, describe the last 2.5 years of your life for me. But with something that is simultaneously so hard and so extraordinary. How do you articulate the way that an experience got to be so deep inside you that it changed almost every part of you? It made you bigger and braver and more humble and far more human. Forgive me because I think some of you have heard this story before, some of you have heard it many times before, but it's the only way that I know how to try to capture what the Peace Corps meant to me. It was about a year into my service in the Dominican Republic, and I just visited my host family in the city. And I was on my way back into the Peace Corps office. And I jumped on the public transportation there, which was essentially a van that was called a guagua, meant for 8 with about 25 people hanging out of it. And I was in the second to last row, had a backpack on my lap and my head down and just minding my own business till we got to the stop in the city. And I got a tap on my shoulder. And I turned around and it was an older gentleman who asked me, Cuerpo de Paz, wondering if I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And I looked at him and I said, Sí, ¿cómo supiste? How did you know? And he looked at me like, really? Okay, fair enough. He never asked my name. He never asked where I was from. He never asked what I was doing. But he went on to tell a story of how when he was a little boy living on the outskirts of Santo Domingo, the village that he lived in didn't have access to running water. And then a Peace Corps volunteer showed up. And he put in a water pipe that brought clean water to his village and his family. He never got a chance to say thank you to that young man. And so he wanted to thank me for what that individual did for their community. A couple moments later, the bus stopped, he got off, and I've never seen him again. I don't know if I'd recognize him or if he'd recognize me. But that is what Peace Corps is all about. Not the individual achievement or the accomplishment of any one volunteer, but the way that all of our experiences link together tell a story that a country can be proud of. I don't know if that was fully the vision that President Kennedy could have thought of on those steps at University of Michigan at about 2 a.m. in front of about 10,000 students in the midst of an exhausting presidential campaign. But in just a few brief minutes there, he laid the foundation for a bold civic experiment that was about more than just security, diplomacy. It was about our identity, our character. Less than a year later, President Kennedy spoke to the first group of Peace Corps volunteers before they left for Ghana and Tanzania. Some of you, it sounds like, might remember his words. Quote, "There are, of course, a good many hundreds of millions of people scattered throughout the world, and you will come in contact with only a few. But the great impression of what kind of country we have and what kind of people we are will depend on their judgment of you. If you can impress them with your commitment to freedom, your pride in your country, and its best traditions of what it stands for, the influence may be far-reaching." President Kennedy saw a nation that was the best version of itself, a place that found power not only in strength, but in justice and in decency. A people who understood that freedom was not quickly won or easily preserved. And those of you in this room today embody a link in that proud story. Your service is woven throughout our brightest chapters, etched in the proudest pages. And if there's one message that I want to leave you with today, it is how precious and how deeply significant those contributions are, especially at this moment in time, when once again we are engaged in a battle of the identity of our country and the choices that we make and how they will define who we are for generations to come. Are we clenched and closed, cold and sharp and scared? Or are we big? Are we gutsy? Are we resilient and righteous? Do you see that uncertainty and lean into it? Or do you back away? You turn on the TV today and you'll hear leaders talk about building walls to keep people out. Follow debates in Washington around health care, or budgets, or tax reform, and you'll see elected representatives that are cheering policies that will bring the sick and the scared and their suffering to their knees. A Speaker of the House who calls it mercy, and a president who calls it greatness. An administration that callously chooses who is worthy of protection and who is not, who counts and who doesn't, who is welcomed and who can be turned away. We have seen red lines littered throughout our government. This is the most we can do. This is the most we can help. This is as far as we will go. No further, no deeper, no more. And then there's the Peace Corps. Because you all have done and continue to do the exact opposite. Take one look at the globe that is awash in unrest and division and discord and says, put me in the game. Ask me to help. Expect me to chip in and do my part. Challenge me to do more. In the weeks, months, and years to come, we will continue to be tested, as we are at any moment. We will be forced to choose collectively how that story is written. So let's be the country that gave the world the Peace Corps. A country that conquered the moon. A country that refuses to set anything less than the high watermark for human rights. That sees dignity in diversity. That keeps its promises. That is not just great, but is truly good. Let's be a country that a young American president challenged to change the world. Because he never doubted for 1 second what we are capable of. And all of you sitting here on a glorious Memorial Day weekend have proved him right. Thank you so much.